As with many of the concepts presented thus far, the role of sleep in the learning environment is almost self-evident. Just about anyone can refer to their own personal experience to understand how sleep, or more generally, a lack of sleep, affects performance. Sleep deprivation led to the reduction of alertness, flexibility, comfort, and excitement, and caused physical pain and fatigue. As with many adults, teenagers are operating on a sleep deficit, with very real economic and social consequences. Economic in the sense that reports have been published that calculate the tremendous monetary loss in productivity as a result of sleep loss, and social consequences when we consider the behaviors people develop to cope with an ever-present lack of sleep. According to J.M. Parrish, investigators found the overall cost of sleep disorders was $7.49 billion, which included $146 million for direct healthcare costs and $313 million for associated conditions. An estimate of work-related injuries due to sleep deprivation was almost $2 billion. Imagine if you did not have to wake up to an alarm. Often, simply ceasing the application of the obsolete mass education model is sufficient to improve learning. Along with proper nutrition, students cannot even begin to learn effectively without sufficient sleep. These are prerequisite, and nothing a teacher can do will improve learning if they are absent. In a 21st century homeschool, as the optimal productivity model finds its rhythm, one of the greatest benefits is improvements in sleep patterns. When you allow your child to sleep until they wake naturally, you relieve them of one of the great dreads of modern life, the alarm clock. Free of this horrid contraption of torture, the hell's bells of the industrial age, students are able to wake in an entirely different way. They wake calmly, gently, comfortably. Imagine the effects this has on their entire psychology. How would your own life be different if you could wake so amicably? How much is enough sleep? While teens need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep each night to function best, most teens do not get enough sleep. One study found that only 15% reported sleeping 8.5 hours on school nights. According to the National Sleep Foundation, teenagers are at high risk for sleep deprivation having to do with the changes in their biological sleep patterns, which shift towards later times for both sleeping and waking during adolescence, meaning it is natural to not be able to fall asleep before 11 p.m., and yet the mass school schedule still insists on waking teens and forcing them to school by 7 a.m., essentially forcing them into a cycle of ever-increasing sleep debt. Not being forced awake increases the likelihood that your student will get the amount of sleep they need, and upon waking be ready to engage in quality learning. The actual numbers of hours of sleep may fluctuate depending on the exertions of the day, but without an alarm clock imposing artificial boundaries, the sleep should cease at the end of a sleep cycle. Besides, there is a much better way to wake up your child than with an abrasive alarm clock. Breakfast. Around 9 a.m., a growing child will start to get hungry, and filling the house with the smell of cooking food is an invitation to a good day of hunting the sweet spot. Good morning. A student can reasonably be expected to wake up in a good mood under such circumstances. Having started the day well, taking care of two critical human needs, the student will be ready for some learning. Indeed, after breakfast is usually the first high-quality sweet spot hour of the day. This is sweet spot effort on the easier end of the scale, allowing the brain to warm up, much in the manner of an athlete easing into a day of training with some light yoga. The first hour is followed by a fun video game break, and then a solid second hour of sweet spot work, which leads right into lunch. Then, something amazing happens. The efforts of the morning and the full belly create a drowsy mind, and instead of popping the lid on a Red Bull or slamming books on the desks of students that are uncontrollably falling asleep as a means of powering through the day, the student is allowed to take a nap. There is no reward for a good morning's work greater than a good lunch and a nap. The afternoon nap coincides with the sunniest part of the day, which is the least pleasant anyway, and improves the likelihood of a productive evening. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of nappiness. The best way to wake your student is with the smell of food. So instead of waking the student from a pleasant nap by yelling at them, let them wake to the smell of something tasty. Again, the student wakes and eases back into the productive activity of the day. Thanks to the nap, the student is well rested and ready to engage deeply in another 2 or 3 hours of quality sweet spot time. Contrary to the current 40-hour work week, in accord with research on dedicated practice, 5 hours of sweet spot activity is the top of the range for daily high-level cognition. The biology of a functioning brain, with the waste products of burning glucose and the construction of neural networks and the growth of myelin, all consume vast amounts of resources. As Karesian explains, the activity of the brain consumes a vast amount of resources, up to 30% of the body's glucose supply just to function. While it may not seem like a lot, 5 hours of real deep learning is a massive amount of work and will leave the brain as tired as a body engaged in 5 hours of intense physical activity. After such a workout, sleep is a well-earned reward. But of course, it is so much more than that. Sleep is a neural state during which both memory consolidation and homeostatic preservations take place. During sleep, significant brain activity in different regions is occurring to form networks for optimal information processing in a wakened state. During sleep, the brain goes to work consolidating the new learning. Much of the magic that goes on in the brain during sleep is only vaguely understood, but almost everyone has had the experience of studying and sleeping and having the information present in the mind in a somewhat more organized way the next day. Sleep only seems to be a state of inactivity, which is one of the reasons it seems such a luxury to allow your child to sleep in, when in fact it is a critical part of the learning process, and taking active part in ensuring your student is achieving high quality and high quantity sleep is critical to a learning coach's role in a 21st century homeschool. Rather than considering sleep as a break or an off-task activity, it is much more productive to consider ensuring quality sleep as an absolutely critical function of a high-quality learning environment. Producing Z's in high quality and quantity is like producing any high-value factory line output. Each Z is a freshly pressed widget worth its weight in gold. Consider that pharmaceutical companies earn billions by pressing out pills that offer good sleep. Every hour of good sleep you help your child get is directly responsible for the creation of human capital. A good night's sleep is better than money in the bank. How much is good sleep worth to you? Now consider that you can provide that amount of wealth to your child, and it will not cost you, but will instead make you both very much richer.